I had an idea. It's the kind of idea that will only be appreciated by a certain group of individuals, enthusiasts, let's say. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put transponders in every one of these buggies here. I'm going to walk through them and we're going to see how they compare. They span from the 80s, the first two are from the 80s, mid 80s, and then the latest one here is actually just from last year. However, when you look at them, you'll think they were all designed around the same time, which is interesting. So what I'm going to do now, and I'm just doing a few mods to these, I'm going to make them all the same spec. And by that I just mean all on the original rims, no 2.2s, and all running 27 turn Tamiya stock silver can motors. And I'm going to put a transponder in every one of them, and we're going to see what kind of lap times we can cut and actually how they compare to one another. It's going to be very interesting, a bit of a test to do actually. Very interesting test to do. The reason why I've had this Fox apart, this is a re-release Fox, it's not original, although it's so hammered it may as well be original. It's really had a hard life, but still goes absolutely fine. And I've actually never raced it in a vintage series or class racing, because the Fox has the, let's get into it. The Fox has this, as everybody knows, has this sealed tub. So this is sealed. So all your electronics are in there. And I've just been very surprised, to be quite honest, that that the ESC hasn't overheated in this thing, or it doesn't constantly overheat. I'm quite surprised because it's all sealed, and you know you'd think it'd get pretty hot, and I'm sure it does get hot, but I haven't had many problems. In any case, I opened it up because the receiver's in there, and we've got to put our transponder in there, our little MyLapse transponder, one of these jobbies here. I just put a little Velcro tab on that rather than run the little transponder holder where you push it in. Those are kind of a bit easier to stick them on and then away you go. In any case, we'll put one of those in there. And the reason why the Fox has been apart is because the receiver's in there. So I made this little extension cord, transponder extension, where I can go ahead and plug it in, and then I'll be away from outside of the thing, as opposed to having to get in there and put it in every time. And I don't want to constantly run a transponder sticking out of this thing, because transponders are kind of expensive, and I've only got a few of them. In any case, this is what we're going to do. So I've got the other thing I've got to do to this is I've got to take this original Sport Tune motor. I've got to take that motor out. So that's next on the list. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do lap times, consistency, and I'm going to do probably like 5 laps or something. And the 5 laps I'm going to do standing start, and then we're going to see what they do for lap times, and then we're going to split it, and we're going to see what they can do consistency wise. And I'll probably just do 5 laps. 5 laps, see what they do. It's going to be very interesting. If you try to have a race with any different buggies, unless the drivers are all running around the same pace, or they have the same familiarity with the buggy, it's not really a true test. What you find usually with vintage racing is it has a bunch to do with the setup of the buggy and the buggy itself, but really, gosh, you know, like any racing, it's the driver and who's pedaling the thing. So and some people can just wheel really well. I am not one of them. I can race real cars, one scale, but I fall short and run out of talent pretty fast with buggies. But in any case, so the best way to do a true test is to have the same driver, and we do 5 laps, you know, in sequence, and we have the same setups as we can get. We have the same motor, and I mean the gearing is going to vary, but look, we're going to put out of box 27 turn motors, and we're going to see how they do. I'm very interested to see how these do. Okay, so we've got the Tamiya Fox, which we're going to run, which I actually really like running it. The front suspension definitely leaves a bit to be desired, as is the case with any monoshock design. The rear suspension is fine. I've tuned it pretty good, so you can, when it's got a LiPo in there, it's not bouncing. See, it's quite nice. Let me have a little look here. Just chuck that wild one up there for a minute. So there's no bouncing, and even the front soaks up pretty good. In any case, I might do a slow motion test of these from a foot drop in a little bit, and we'll record that there. Really break down the performance of these Tamiya buggies. In any case, so the Fox we're going to do, it's got its monoshock in the front, this horrific looking sway bar arrangement. I don't know what to say about it really. The gearbox is pretty efficient. They actually go good. They're one of those buggies that go pretty good with just a 27 turn silver can, don't they? They go pretty good. They've just got a open diff, no ball diff. But yeah, it doesn't make much difference. It's all fine. They have this great looking spoiler here, which is attached to the body, which is naff. It's sort of, yeah, doesn't do much. Yeah, quite nice length to it, so it doesn't swing around on itself too fast. You can kind of catch it. Yeah, it's a real knack to driving the Fox. I tend to just drive it feels like a racing off-road quad bike, rear-wheel drive to run. You just on the back wheels and kind of steering with the back of it and doing some stuff vaguely with the front steering and trying to sort of get around a track as smooth as possible. But there's a plenty of people who actually do quite well in the pre-89 plastic tub vintage class, which is what we're sort of aiming for with these kind of things. They do well with the Fox chassis. They do quite well. But I think that's a lot to do with the driver rather than just the Fox itself. So just to talk about the vintage classes, two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, sure. But then what we do is we also split between a plastic tub and carbon upper and lower, or FRP upper and lower deck versions of things. So to split them for things like the Ultima and things like that, or RC10. I mean, the Fox is cool, but you don't really want to be racing it with RC10s unless the people can't drive very well, in which case you'll do okay. But in any case, it's not a sort of fair racing, so we tend to split a pre-89 plastic tub versus everything else, and it makes the racing, really close, really fun kind of racing. In any case, that's what it is there. And sometimes they also split racing too, and they keep the vintage classes so you can't run 2.2 inch modern rims and modern tires. So that's an interesting point as well. But anyway, so there's the Fox. I'm going to do that, and then this one's already set up for the way we're going to run it. This is, of course, the Tamiya Wild one. Once again, this has had a hard life, but it's pretty robust. These are pretty strong. In fact, if I was going to recommend a plastic tub buggy from Tamiya for vintage racing, it would have to be probably one of these, or maybe a Fox if you like it. This is, more people like the look of the Wild one. It's easier to like. The Fox is like, it's very Tamiya. It's an acquired taste. But this is real scale looking, Wild one is real scale looking buggy. And very similar sort of gearbox arrangement. They go good with the 27 turn motor, which is what this has got. So in any case, that's the front suspension is better than the Fox, but only kind of just. It's very scale in its makeup. So it's got that classic buggy, what would you call that, trailing arm arrangement. But I've sort of tuned this, and there we go. Let me see. I mean, dropping these things like this without a battery in is largely irrelevant because it's not the weight that it's going to be. But I did notice that I had to, with this Fox and the Wild one, you do have to fiddle with the suspension a little bit if you're going to run a LiPo, because they're so much lighter, and if you have like a factory spring setup, it's made for huge amounts of weight, nickel metal hydride, and then the extra batteries for your receiver and things like that back in the day. So the stock spring rates and things like that are not set up for how light they end up being with a lipo. So this is going good anyway. It's a blast to run. I'm actually running, what are these tires on the front? These are like a Schumacher. What does it say? Can't really see. Some sort of a grass tire, I think. Yeah, Schumacher something. Mini pins. And those are actually a Traxxas tire on the back off an old buggy. They go alright. Fit on the standard rims. Not too bad. 2-inch. Okay, so those two there from the 80s. And I reckon it's going to be actually really interesting to see the lap times of those two. Very interesting. I will put the stock tyres back on the wild one to match the Fox, otherwise it's not fair. Or I'll run the same set. It'll be the same as I can make it. Right. And they both run a stick pack, Dean's connector, 7.4 volt. We're going to do the same setup, see how they go. And then the next one we've got here is, of course, a recent release from Tamiya, which is, of course, the BBX. Now, interestingly enough, it's actually got a very similar wheelbase to the Fox. You can see it's a little bit bigger, but the wheelbase is closer, and it's substantially shorter on the wild one. If you look at that there, and it's also feels heavier. I should get them on scales. I don't want to go that technical. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But in any case, I'll have to. These tires aren't glued, so I'll have to glue up these tires. I don't think these are going to be very good. These look like not very good. In any case, this is a BBX, of course, and the suspension is far more comprehensive on the BBX than it is on either the Wild one or the Fox. So, yeah, you would expect it to be a lot better. It's more expensive. You've got these big trailing arms on the back, and on the front, upper and lower arms. Look at that. It's pretty nice. Great. It's a great looking kit. It's amazing the things that Tamiya end up doing. It's very interesting. You wouldn't think there'd be a market for doing a completely retro looking buggy, and it's not low end. It's not cheap either, which is an interesting point. I mean, I love it. I think it's awesome. I think it's what I would have loved to see that back in the day, because this is the level of detail they could have gone with the kit, and it would have been awesome. But in any case, I'm not going to complain about it now. Even these shrouds, attention to detail is awesome. The plastic quality on the BBX is on some of the plastic parts is awesome. It's more like you see on the DB01 or the DN01, slightly higher end Tamiya. Some great features. You've got these little lights all over it, really cool. Driver figure's cool, although I can't paint them for dick. Yeah, I'm running Spectrum receivers, radio gear, and all of these, all the same. DSMR, it's not very good, but you get to that point where you've got so many receivers that to switch now would be a big task. So I'm not going to do that. And they work fine. And of course I've got the push button to bind, and I just kind of like that. So it's nice. But yeah, BBX. I'm really interested to see how these go. I'm gonna the tires on the back I think will hook up pretty good, and the suspension's nice. I mean, it should go good. Substantially more expensive and a real modern take on a vintage buggy. I'm so pleased they did it. I mean, a lot of people think it's stupid, but it looks so cool, and it's one of those things when you see it on the shelf, you're just thinking this is neat, you know. Like my philosophy is kind of if you wouldn't have it on your shelf, then I'm not going to race it either. That's kind of the threshold. That may be the reason why I don't race a lot of modern stuff, and I'd rather race old or cool looking stuff. Although, of course, I couldn't race this in vintage class. I wouldn't be able to enter it in a vintage class because it's a vintage design, but of course it's not a vintage buggy, and so it would be excluded. But just for fun, I thought it would be interesting to put this has got a sport tune motor in it. I thought I would take that motor out, put a 27 turn in, and then all things being equal, I will run this 5 laps. I will run this 5 laps. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that I'm dialed in. So sort of I'm not unfamiliar with one and it's just a mess. No, I'm gonna do some practice. I'm gonna feel like, yeah, I'm putting in some good laps. I'm gonna push to about 90%. And so hopefully not make too many mistakes and just do those nice conservative, consistent laps, and then see what's the fastest. It's going to be real interesting to see, and I'll try and get some footage of that too. I'll get my buddy and we'll get up there and put some laps in, and then we'll also just do a bit of a driver's impression to see which is easy to handle and which is a handful. Because remember too that if you're going to race, it's all well and good to do clean laps when there's nobody there, but as soon as you've got lots of cars on the track, you want a very forgiving chassis, and one that's going to, give you a bit of room for error. You don't want to be in the razor edge of traction and only be able to put in good laps if you take the perfect line. And then as soon as there's other people on the track and you get offline and get a bit out of sorts, the thing's impossible to control. You don't want that. Same goes for real cars, of course. So an easy car to drive is a car that you can go consistently for the 5 minutes and then expect a reasonable result. So let's do it.